Welcome, and bienvenidos, mis amigas, to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where tech talk meets real talk, and we pair business strategy with a bold pour of tequila. Of course, I'm your host, Kat Lopez Shelby. If you're new here, I'm so excited that you joined us. If you're returning, hey, you know what to expect. Of course, I'm a digital nomad, techie chica, tech trailblazer, and the founder of Shelby Technology Solutions. Each week on the podcast, I sit down with other trailblazers, thought leaders, and everyday innovators to explore how technology shapes our lives, our work, and of course, our communities. So whether you're scaling your business, navigating cybersecurity, or chasing your digital bliss from the road, this show is your space to learn, laugh, and of course, level up. So grab your favorite tequila, whether it's neat, on the rocks, or straight from the bottle. I promise we don't judge here. Let's dive into today's episode. And of course, today's episode is no different. So after some scheduling gymnastics, we'll call it, Mr. Dan, and a few tech glitches, I'm not sure. I think my calendar decided it needed a summer vacation. I'm thrilled to finally welcome Dan from Meter to the show. So Dan, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, bienvenidos a todos. My name is Dan Tehrani. I'm a go-to-market founding member here on the Meter team. I've been in the industry a little over 10 years. The last few years I spent at a small company called Cisco. And I think one thing that gets me excited about this format, speaking with you, Kat, is I noticed a change going on in just networking infrastructure and kind of the world as it continues to iterate. And I found Meter, and Meter's now able to find our partners and our customers, and definitely a different approach to networking, but we're excited to share the story, and hopefully it resonated for you and for everyone like it resonated for us.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, I like to say I only have the best of the best on the podcast anyways, because I love to introduce people to either new suppliers, people that bring something, different to the channel, different to helping people's businesses. And, I definitely think Meter does that. So I'm super pumped to have you on the show. Now, before we dive into today's tech talk, let's loosen up with a little tequila knowledge. And because this is Tech and Tequila, we couldn't have it without some tequila. So even though we are recording this at 10 o'clock in the morning, because it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, today's spotlight, of course, is going to be on Pantalones. So let me bring them over. I've had them a couple times, and I don't know, it's not going to, there we go, Pantalones. It came into view. If you haven't heard of Pantalones, it's a great tequila. It comes in, I want to say 3 different flavors. Let me double check on that. Yes, it does. It comes in Blanco, Reposado, and Anejo. And of course, you probably have heard of it because it is Matthew McConaughey and Camilla Alves McConaughey's brand. So it literally means pants in Spanish. The brand, of course, leans all the way into the humor of that. If you've seen any of their displays or any of their commercials, it's all about, the best thing you can put on and take off. And of course, we would not have a tequila on here if it was made with a bunch of junk. And it, of course, is not. It is made with 100% blue agave Weber. It's organically farmed in Jalisco, Mexico. So it's clean and, of course, it's amazing. Their first campaign, of course, went viral, and it featured the McConaughey's riding motorcycles, of course, pantless. That's right, with no pants. And, it's definitely something that you can sip. I, of course, have it right here. So I will take a quick sip, and then we will get into the meat of things. I take a sip.
Cheers.
Cheers. Salute. So, if you can pour yourself a glass of tequila or a sip, let's all get comfortable. Let's, talk some tech. And of course, Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited to talk with you about everything that Meter has to offer. So if you don't mind, let's kind of get started with the big picture of things. And that is, how does Meter help growing businesses simplify their network infrastructure so that they can focus on scaling and not troubleshooting or managing vendors?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great place to start. I think when you look at networking holistically and some of the manufacturers that are out there, phenomenal technology. But to me, networking is a three-part problem. It's obviously the hardware that you need to procure. It's the software and the licenses and the support that go along with it. But there's this stepchild, if you will, that isn't often discussed from a vendor's perspective, and that's operations, installation, break fix, what happens when X and Y occur. And that's often left out in support contracts, in just general networking OEM manufacturer approach. Where I think Meter is incredibly special is, yes, we have a great engineering team behind our hardware stack, and we're building our own hardware and delivering it. And that because we're vertically integrated, there are some software advantages that really set us apart. But I think if you talk to a lot of our customers here in Texas and beyond, nationally and internationally, where they find the value in Meter in scaling and really their day-to-day operations is in the operations piece, because we're an as-a-service model, meaning from an SLA perspective, we just speak incredibly different terms. And in many cases, we own the design, configuration, installation, and continuous truck rolls for all your networks and all your locations, meaning operationally, you can breathe knowing that the most mission critical portion of your infrastructure is not only backed by SLAs, but it's backed by the manufacturer of the hardware itself, which is incredibly unique.
So in essence, what you're saying is, unlike some of the other, let's say, suppliers out there, Meter really gives you, and I'm going to use that term everybody likes to talk about, but that white glove approach to things, where it's like, we're not just here to sell you some equipment and then kind of leave you hanging. We're here to like help you with the whole process.
That's right. Spot on.
And, that's definitely why I had you on here. For many businesses, dealing with internet providers is a major headache. How does Meter's end-to-end approach, especially with Meter Connect, relieve that pain point?
Yeah, phenomenal you brought that up. So, Meter is an overarching company that has key focuses. One of them is Meter Network, which is security appliances, switches, access points, both indoor and outdoor. Another one is Meter Cellular, which focuses on cellular connectivity with neutral host CBRS technology. But the one you just mentioned is Meter Connect, which works hand in hand with both of these products. Our Connect team is a group of phenomenal engineers that effectively can help customers in the ISP lifecycle, right? And when you're running a Meter Network with Meter Connect, our hardware, software, and operations allows us to detect when a network goes down, troubleshoot if it's a Meter hardware or software issue, and if it's neither or, we're able to proactively open a ticket with the Connect's team's help as part of that support loop to the ISP on site. Of course, fail you over to the secondary or tertiary connection as needed, then troubleshoot and maintain that ticket on the customer's behalf. We include PDUs as standard in our deployments. So when AT&T gets on the phone with us and says, hey, have you power cycled the ISP modem? Well, if I'm sitting here in Dallas, Texas, but my site is in New York, it's kind of hard to do or get somebody on the phone to do so. We can easily, through the dashboard, power cycle it and work with AT&T to troubleshoot and get that primary connection established. And of course, this is a big one. Once it's established, get you back over the primary connection. Kat, I can't tell you how many customers we're helping where on paper they have this written out, but operationally it's not hardened. And they end up spending thousands of dollars on gigabits they've consumed on their cellular failover just because someone never actually switched them back over to their primary ISP. So that's been a huge benefit to our customers, and they love the fact that really it's one bag to pack when you think about network troubleshooting and operations from the ISP all the way to the networking equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure we've both seen it where either they go down and everybody's scrambling around trying to figure out, like, how do we switch over to the backup? Everything's supposed to be automatic and it's not, or kind of like what you said is where now the primary is backup. Now, how do we get everything switched over? And you kind of take that off the plate of many businesses
That's right.
No, which really leads to the next question that I have. So for a lot of the businesses that I interact with and a lot of our listeners, they don't have these large in-house IT teams. So how does Meter make high performance internet and network management accessible for companies without a technical staff?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you look at our support model and how it aligns to, and we like to say proactive network support, which often blurs into us just running the network for you, because we have hardware and software that's deployed in your four walls that's able to detect network degradation, ISP health, ISP down. We're able to power cycle remotely at all of your sites, whether that's the network infrastructure at the switch level or the ISP modem, as we've mentioned. We also, in our stacks standard, deploy observers. These observers are rather cool. We deploy them in a group of APs, and they're effectively an AP hardware that's deployed with a different software script that's in observation mode. And what it's doing is it's health checking all the surrounding APs, the SSIDs, and really gathering network health metrics. And if there's anything that's outside the ordinary or acceptable that we've defined from a software perspective, it automatically opens a ticket up to our support team and flags it, versus we've all seen it before, right? You have a tax clinic or a dental office, the dentists come in, well, there's no internet. Why is it there no internet? And they're spending the first 45 minutes, hour of their day just trying to reestablish service. We're able to catch that, get it into our support cycle, troubleshoot the whole spectrum, and ensure that businesses are online and really able to perform their business critical needs, right? Whether that's processing credit cards or checking health, a guest in for their checkup, whatever it is. But since we take that approach, we find that on average, most of our customers who come from, say, a Meraki or Aruba or these, quote unquote, vertically integrated platforms, they're usually seeing about 80 to 85% reduction in their tickets on a week-to-week basis, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out one thing is a lot of times, like, you all are going to see the issue prior to the client being on site or prior to having that, where they're having to come in and then troubleshoot and power on and off and figure out who to call and get everything set. And, I can speak from my experience. Some of my customers literally just call me to help with issuing trouble tickets because they've been on the phone, and we won't point out any particular internet service provider, but they've been on the phone for like 2 hours and they're like, I've been passed around 6 times. I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to at this point.
That's right. If you talk to, we have a customer out in Fort Worth. It's Fellowship Academy. They're a private school, and Mark Robinson's a good friend, and he's been a Meter customer for a while now. And what he says the hardest part of his job now that he runs a Meter network is actually he calls our support team to figure out what we fixed that week, because he doesn't really run into support issues anymore. It's a pretty cool story where he's pinging us to figure out what we fixed versus the other way around. So it's good to see the model working.
Yeah, exactly. Taking that headache off, because, the other side of that is when the internet service provider is like, no, it's y'all's issue. It's not us. And then it's kind of going back and forth.
Finger pointing is a horrible way to run an IT.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. So many companies these days are embracing hybrid work. So how does Meter support distributed teams while keeping their connectivity fast, secure, and seamless across, of course, multiple locations?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, when you're talking from a location perspective, obviously there's key security features in modern day firewalls that I think are table stakes. You're talking IPS, IDS, DNS security. Those are critical, right? And one thing I love about the Meter platform is we're not here to nickel and dime you for software. Once you're in the Meter dashboard, you have access to all the security features. We're not going to say, hey, if you want IPS or IDS, you got to bump up a tier or you got to upgrade. That's not really our MO. So customers really enjoy that when you're looking at from the site perspective. Now, site to site, things like client VPN, auto VPN, client VPN for remote workers ensures a secure connection, whether that's back to corporate headquarters or any of the remote offices. It effectively means wherever you are, however you're working, we can ensure that you're securely accessing any company information. And then, of course, sites can speak securely to each other. So all that's included out of the box. There's no gotcha licenses. And I think customers really appreciate that, especially nowadays with all the crazy licensing snafus that are going on.
I know. And of course, then there's always like adding a new team member and being like, okay, what license do we add? Do we pick A, B, C, D? When there's so many licenses, it can be very confusing to clients. And, I mean, obviously they have tech consultants like myself to help with that, but making it easy and seamless is so important these
100%.
Can you share a story of a client example where the company saw measurable improvements like reduced downtime, better employee experience, or cost savings after switching to Meter from a previous company?
Yeah, 100%. Quite a few stories here. I think one thing that we mentioned earlier is the ISP piece, which is incredibly unique from a networking manufacturer. So I have one customer here in Texas. They're headquartered in Plano. They have a few thousand locations nationally and internationally up into Canada. They've started deploying Meter here at a couple hundred sites at their corporate locations, and they're going to be hopefully moving over to their franchisee locations. But they had a huge problem with ISPs, right? You can imagine if you're an IT person and you're dealing with one ISP, and Kat, I know there's some PTSD probably with some of your listeners and even myself dealing with the powers that be that power our world. But that problem really magnifies when you have 100, 500, 1,000 sites. And if you're spending an average of, let's just say 30 minutes per connection, you're talking about a solid business week if you don't have this automated and the right support functions in place to ensure that, well, there's a plan, right? So I think for this customer, when they heard that, they said, whoa, you're telling me we can get a week back just by simply having Meter Connect interface with our Meter network? We said 100%. Furthermore, in the times that they're down, we're actually right now in the process of manufacturing our own G1 gateway. And this G1 gateway will be vertically integrated like our PDUs and our switches into our stack. And it's effectively a secondary cellular connection. So for my customers out there, or for folks who are listening that have small sites, don't necessarily want a secondary ISP connection, we can include that G1 gateway. It's an eSIM that connects to AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, really whichever is the strongest connection. And you can pay as you go, right? So when the time that we're troubleshooting the connection, you automatically fail over. We'll fail you over for business critical applications, right? We don't want Jimmy sitting in the waiting room streaming 4K Game of Thrones, eating away at your data plan, right? We just want to ensure that credit cards are being processed or whatever it is getting done. And then as soon as our Connect team reestablishes connection, we've power cycled the PDU, and this is very important, like we mentioned, switch you back over to the primary and restore all network functions. And the customer and the support team really don't even know that it happened. So it's an incredibly smooth line process through hardware and software.
I know you're speaking my language when you talked about that, because I had a customer once that kept complaining and they had satellite service, but they kept complaining, well, it's just not working. It's not working. And every time I would walk into their office, their secretary was streaming Netflix on her computer. And I was like, that is the issue. Like, I don't know how else to tell you this. And I mean, universally, I'm sure it has changed several years ago, but it was literally like, this is why your other stuff is not working, And of course we could put equipment to, block that these days. But at the time they were like, no, we'll just talk to her. But every time I would walk in, it would be, she's streaming Netflix. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So much data. I mean, 4K, 8K, and we don't have to exit out completely, but we can definitely, and we can do this natively with Meter, prioritize who gets what access to the bandwidth, right? And if we're running at a maximum capacity and you're watching Netflix, either we're going to degrade your streaming quality, or we're just going to kick you off altogether. Because business operations matter to, I imagine, your customers just like ours.
Exactly. So, you've talked a lot about what happens when people, need to troubleshoot or there's an issue. So let's talk about reliability. What makes Meter's network infrastructure more dependable than traditional setups?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's another three-part answer here. And I think what's easier for me to do is actually peel back the layer of the ethos of the organization and why we're able to be so bullish on our design philosophy. We really adhere to a 3 R's kind of philosophy when it comes to deployments. And that's redundant, resilient, and robust at the hardware, software, and support level. We've hit on some of the support pieces, but from a hardware perspective, we're not in the business of bill of materials. We're not here to just resell you a bunch of blinky boxes and, wish you the best of luck. We're on the hook for the network design. We're also on the hook for truck rolls, and truck rolls can be quite expensive. So it's in our best interest to design an incredibly redundant network. So number one, we're reducing anxiety. And number two, we're reducing the amount of times we need to go into the field. So for example, you'll see us deploy additional APs. In case one AP fails over, there's enough carryover and signal strength that we can fail over to a nearby AP. Business continuity is maintained. Again, everyone on the network has no idea that the AP they're looking at is actually down. And then once in due time, we can send one of our technicians, and we have contract partners all over the US, to swap out that AP in an anxiety-free manner. I remember working in my previous life where we had this concept of the minimum viable bill of materials. So if that AP went down, because we did a minimum viable BOM, all of a sudden it was all hands on deck. We need to get something out. We need to switch it out. We need to RMA. It was a really great way to shorten your lifespan, I would say, from a network engineering perspective. But with us, since we designed that redundancy from the start, it's just a lot smoother. We furthermore do it on the switching side. If you have a secondary ISP connection, for example, Kat, we include a secondary security appliance for HA, whether you want to do active-active and you want to do SD-WAN, or you want to just have a failover at no additional charge. Again, resilient, redundant, and robust at every level to ensure that whatever happens on the network, we're able to maintain not just our SLAs, but your business as well.
I'm telling you, you're speaking my language when you talk about redundancy, because what I always tell people is internet goes down, right? And we require internet, and we need internet for so many things that we don't think about these days, especially when it comes to business. But you don't want to get to the point where you're down for 2 or 3 days, God forbid. But also it's, even what does 3 hours look like? I particularly work with a client that owns a franchise. It's a restaurant. And I mean, their credit card, when their internet's down, their credit card machines don't work. And, it's a smaller town. Word gets around like, hey, their credit card machines were down. And then it's, when we've had discussions about this, they're like, it's not just that we're down that day. It's that, we see like a dip in customers coming in over the next couple of days.
That's right.
Because let's be honest, I would say probably 90% of people pay with credit card or debit card these days versus something else.
Easily. Yeah.
Exactly. So, of course, we were just talking about credit cards, and security is always top of mind for everybody. So how does Meter integrate systems to enhance cybersecurity and reduce exposure for businesses and clients that you guys work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, again, it breaks down into multiple parts. Number one is just our visibility into the network itself, vertically integrated. Our hardware is maniacally fine-tuned to our software. So from that perspective, we're incredibly locked down. But back to the security features that we include, all right? IDS, IPS, firewall traffic shaping rules, the VPN, both on the client auto side, and then DNS security that we include as standard, right? That's a lot of the time an additional security license that you have to go procure from one of the major manufacturers. We include a base level of DNS security that's incredibly serviceable for a good majority of our clients straight out of the box. And I think when you add all that together, and us coming in, having designed thousands and thousands and thousands of networks, we can take that expertise and take a security first posture in your network design and then build that resiliency all the way through. So I think inherently that's what we like to do, right? We want to reduce exposure for us as well as our customers. And our incentives are truly aligned because we take on that design portion as part of our commitment to our customers.
So what you're saying is basically like when you're designing everything, security is definitely taken into account. And it's one of the things that it's not like an afterthought. It's like, it's part of the overall, I'll use the term holistic infrastructure that you're putting together for them.
Yeah, 100%. And we take our experiences with clients that we have, Bridgewater, one of the largest hedge funds out there, incredibly security focused.
Mm-hmm.
We have customers like Lyft who have incredibly complex business operations and they need to lock it down. God forbid something goes wrong there, someone gets into the network, you can imagine the chaos that would cause. So the beauty is it's a trickle effect for our customers. We take those learnings, we not only incorporate it into the product, but from an operations perspective too, because again, we're doing these deployments, we can include that know-how onto your deployment and you can be the benefactor of all those learnings.
So one of the things, of course, this leads to is how does Meter help with planned growth? So whether that's moving to a new office, opening a second location, or expanding remote operations.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you speak to our customers, the biggest thing that they will say from the onset, if you ask them that question, is predictability. And what do I mean by that? Since we own the lifecycle management of the hardware, they're not in the business of tracking down end of sale, end of support, this, that. They can just say, hey, Meter, we have a new office coming up. It's 10,000 square feet in Odessa, and we need to go live in the next 4 weeks. Great. We handle all the operations to get that network up, the cabling behind the APs, all of it's included, and they have a predictable price. Furthermore, as they continue to expand, and this is what a lot of my multi-site customers, whether they have a corporate office and 4 or 5 locations, or they're like, one of my clinics in San Antonio that has 27 locations and they all have varying business needs, is that lifecycle management allows them to just say, once I have the network in place, someone else is on the hook for ensuring that from a hardware perspective, everything's up to date. We're moving from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7. They're doing the cutover, the install, the configuration, and then ensuring that, the network operations for when folks come back into the office are in place, right? I think when you boil down Meter as a company, yes, we're delivering networks as a service, but our ultimate goal is to deliver them truly as a hardened utility. It's such an interesting idea. And this is actually where our name comes from. We're not a unit of measurement that unfortunately we don't use in the United States. The idea here is that whether you're residential or commercial, you don't think twice about your power meter or your water meter, right? Those are just on. You come in and you switch it on and it's designed to meet the capacity of the space. I don't know the last time I've turned on the faucet and water hasn't come out, right? It's an incredibly high nines of availability that we take for granted. I feel, and I think the company feels, and perhaps you feel the same way, that internet is the same for any business or really any resident these days, right? Like it's a utility. So if we're engineering for utility-like resiliency, that's how we help our customers grow. Because once that utility is in the space, we're not looking at it in the next 5 to 7 years like a networking manufacturer does with deprecating hardware and things like that. We're looking at that space for decades and decades and generations to come because we want to be the utility meter provider for all internet needs in those 4 walls.
And I think that you really hit the nail on the head with that, because it is like internet is just integral to everything that we do these days. I mean, whether it's home or work, but definitely for businesses, it's absolutely, a must. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Absolutely. So I know that Meter has partnered, of course, with big names like Microsoft and CDW. So what does that mean for the everyday business owner or client who's utilizing Meter?
Yeah, it's a very thoughtful question. What does that mean for the everyday shop when we have partnerships like that? I think the first thing is just validation. Going through the gauntlet with Microsoft, with CDW isn't just a 1 hour go grab lunch and all of a sudden you're certified with them. It's rigorous months and months of being tested, of being poked at, of having the kimono opened, if you will, and those folks really going in and trying to find the broken pieces and putting us to the test. So we wear those as a badge of honor to say we've gone through the gauntlet with Microsoft, we've gone through the gauntlet with CDW, and quote unquote, we've passed the sniff test, if you will, of 40, 50, 60 engineers putting us through our paces. So I think for the average shop that maybe doesn't have the resources to dedicate to beating up a company, if you will, in the best of senses, to beating us up, it's a nice validation of, oh, this is a solid organization with runway that's really built a product that these, multi-billion-dollar organizations are attaching their names to, which I think can bring, really any customer peace of mind.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things is when a client decides to partner with Meter, even if they have an existing per se MSP that they're utilizing, they don't have to look to that MSP to have that type of, I was going to say, speciality or have those certifications, because Meter really meets that need for some people.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. Well, of course, finally, if a business is considering upgrading its network but doesn't know where to start, what is the first step that they should take with Meter?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's ultimately a matter of where they're at in the process, right? And that first step for one could be, oh my gosh, I have to go live with folks reporting to this office in Austin in 5 weeks. What am I going to do? Versus, hey, I need to do some future planning, right? Either way, folks like yourself, Kat, are a great way to get us connected, whether that's with me personally and working with you. It's an easy way to kind of understand the Meter philosophy, methodology, and really if it's the right fit for you. I can tell you from our clients who've worked with us, it's really a 3-step process. What we like to do is set up an introductory conversation where, of course, you can learn about us, but we can also learn about you, right? And how we can integrate into your managed operations flows, or maybe you're more basic than that. What are your networking needs? What technologies are bothersome to you, so on and so forth. And then from there, we go into an operations and technical call if needed. And then number 3 is we just understand your space and we provide you pricing for the space or spaces that you need networking or cellular coverage in. And then we take the rest on from there, right? From an installation configuration perspective. So our team usually likes to say, we can get networks done reliably in 4 to 6 weeks. We can do them quicker. We can do them slower. But needless to say, that first step is reaching out to a trusted partner like yourself, Kat, and helping us broker that conversation.
Yeah, no, I love it. I always ask every single person that's on the podcast, if there was 3 things that when someone thought of Meter, you wanted them to think about or differentiates you guys from anyone else, what would those be for you?
That's a great question. I guess the 3 things I would love someone to walk away with after a conversation with us are the ease of use, from the fact that, if you have a floor plan, we can design a tailor-made network based off the software that we have internally for your space for decades to come. That's going to be self-healing, resistant, redundant, and robust in every aspect. I think number 2 is economics. A lot of people hear exactly what we're offering and they think, oh my gosh, this has to be so expensive. The fact of the matter is, since we're manufacturing our own hardware and we've gotten away from this world of a little bit car salesy, right? This is the new latest and greatest feature set, and your old car with, it doesn't have ventilated seats. We get away from that, right? We own that process, and we focus on providing a service that's, really defensible for years and years to come. We can offer economics that if you try to wrap this around in this exact model using, say a networking manufacturer and perhaps, a network manager, they just can't meet our economics, and they can't even get close. And then thirdly is peace of mind. I think when you think Meter, it's, the industry says it's the easy button in terms of getting a enterprise grade network delivered at an incredibly quick clip. And then knowing that whether, we go towards AI networking, which our company is doing great stuff on, with our generative UI and command product, and again, streamlining support so we're meeting our customers quicker, and integrating that with human workflows, right? I think that's the other big thing too, is when you think Meter, think easy button, think I have a project and I know if I can just call on Meter, they'll be able to provide that utility for years and years to come.
No, I think that's a great way to sum it up, is that think of meter as, instead of having to contact, multiple suppliers or contact multiple people, is kind of like, when it comes to network infrastructure, when it comes to your internet service and, obviously your Wi-Fi or wireless access points, that you guys are the easy button, because you're like, here, we can come in and we can take care of everything. And you're not having to worry about it. You're not having to sweat it. Like, it's all done for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliantly put. That's exactly it.
No, well, like I said earlier, of course, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And of course, for all our listeners, if they're trying to find you, Mr. Dan, what is the best place? Is it LinkedIn? Is it, where can they find you at?
Yeah, the best place to honestly find me these days is just my email address. It's my first initial, last name, Tehrani @meter.com. Shoot me a note, but even better, I work with phenomenal partners like Kat, and we have, Kat, obviously a great relationship. If that's usually the best way to find me, either email me directly or email Kat, and then you can connect the dots from there. But if you guys have more questions than that, our website, I often people say, is a phenomenal place. It's really beautifully designed, and I got to tip my hat to the team there. They did a great job. You'll find a lot of baseline information. But back to your first question, or one of your last questions, Kat, what's it like to get started? Again, reach out to us. We can set up a conversation, tailor it to your space, and then we can walk you through the process.
Yeah, I love it. So once again, thank you so much, Dan, for joining me today. Of course, I'm always going to tell my listeners, definitely check out meter.com. By the way, the website is very, very well designed, super easy. I like to say it's flashy, but with a point. Like, it's very intuitive. I love it. And of course, make sure that you subscribe to Tech and Tequila. And thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.